When they came, they did not recognize the land, but made out a bay with a beach. They planned to run the ship ashore on it, if they could. So they cast off the anchors and abandoned them onto the sea. And at the same time, they unfastened the lines of the rudders, and, hoisting the foresail into the wind, they made for the beach. But they struck a sandbar and ran the ship aground. The bow was wedged in and could not be moved, but the stern began to break up under the pounding of the waves. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners, so that none might swing away and escape. But the centurion wanted to save Paul, and so kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to the shore, and then the rest, some on planks, others on debris from the ship. In this way, all reached ashore safely. Once we had reached safety, we learned that the island was called Malta. The natives showed us extraordinary hospitality. They lit a fire and welcomed all of us because it had begun to rain and was cold. Welcome to the Padre podcast. This is the place where I share my heart and mind because I am a forever student and I would like to graduate in heaven, and I hope you do too. This is Padre Podcast episode number 20. Wow, we've been doing this for a while, haven't we? And today I would like to talk about this super saint of the church, St. Paul. There is no way to cover everything about him, but I am going to try my best, actually. And the reason is because we have been in the liturgy of the cycle C, the second reading of ordinary time, the first weeks. We have been reading 1 Corinthians, the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, the first one. And so it's a fascinating letter. And one of the things that I love to do is to follow the text along in the oldest manuscript that has survived. We'll talk about it in a second. For example, in the second Sunday in ordinary time, the second reading said, 1 Corinthians 12, there are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different forms of service, but the same Lord. There are different workings, but the same God who produces all of them in everyone. So, and to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. This is what St. Paul says. And then on the third Sunday in ordinary time C, the second reading said, as a body is one, though it has many parts, all the parts of the body, though many, are one body, so also Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, slaves or free persons, and we were all given to drink of the one Spirit. Now, the body is not a single part, but many. If a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. Or if an ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it does not for this reason belong any less to the body. And then it continues explaining about all of this. Now, you are Christ's body and individually parts of it. And then continues using this beautiful image of the human body to represent the church, which is the body of Christ. In the fifth Sunday in Ordinary Time, the second reading, Cycle C, we heard, "For I handed on to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised from the third day in accordance with the Scriptures, that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. After that he appeared to 500 brothers at once. After that he appeared to James and to all the apostles, and last of all he appeared to me." And then on the sixth Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C, second reading, we heard, "But if Christ is preached as raised from the dead, how can some among you say there is no resurrection of the dead? If there is no resurrection of the dead, then neither has Christ been raised. But now Christ has been raised from the dead, the firstfruits of those who have fallen asleep." And then on the seventh Sunday in Ordinary Time, this is what we're going to hear. "So too it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being, the last Adam, a life-giving spirit." And it will continue explaining how we have to be conformed to the new Adam, who is Jesus Christ. And then on the eighth Sunday in Ordinary Time, the second reading, Cycle C, we will hear, "For that which is corruptible must clothe itself with incorruptibility, and that which is mortal must clothe itself with immortality. And when this which is corruptible clothes itself with incorruptibility, and this which is mortal clothes itself with immortality, then the word that is written shall come about. Death is swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" And of course, he's speaking about the resurrection of Christ. And then we're going to enter into Lent. And even in Lent, we're going to be reading other texts from the letters of St. Paul. Well, one of the things that I love to do is to follow along the text in the oldest manuscripts that we have of St. Paul. And the oldest, or one of the oldest manuscripts that we have of the letters of St. Paul that has survived, comes from around year 200 AD. The letters of St. Paul obviously were written in the first century, in the middle of the first century. But the manuscripts that have survived to our time come from the third century. So it will be from year 200 and forward. And I have here a complete copy of Papyrus 46, produced by the Center of Studies of the New Testament Manuscripts. And so what you see here, for example, in these pages, this is the conclusion of the letter to the Hebrews, and then the beginning of the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. All of this is written in Greek, and the text just continues, page after page after page. And all the pages have been digitized by this center that is based in Dallas, and they go everywhere in the world to visit the places where these manuscripts are kept. And Papyrus 46 is kept in two different places. One of them is the Chester Beatty Library in Dublin, in Ireland. And the other place is very local, the University of Michigan here in Ann Arbor. And so this is the first letter to the Corinthians, and it is in the oldest manuscript that has survived, which is Papyrus 46. So here I am marking, we're arriving towards chapters 10, 11. So for example, in 1 Corinthians 11, we have the first account of the Eucharist that comes from St. Paul. So it is in a letter of St. Paul that we hear the first account of the Eucharist, not in a gospel, because the gospels were written later. As we continue with the text of St. Paul here, this is the image of the body, that we are Christ's body, that I was reading, because we have heard that in church a few weeks ago. The famous hymn to love: love is patient, love is kind, love is not pompous, is not arrogant, Love rejoices in the truth. All things shall pass. Faith, hope, and love remains, but the most important of the three of them is certainly love, agape. And so that's the text from 1 Corinthians. And it just continues. This is the manuscript of 1 Corinthians in the oldest text that has survived. So, for example, this page is in the Chester Beatty Library. And so we are now in chapter 15. And it keeps going. So every single leaf of the account of 1 Corinthians. And this is where 1 Corinthians finishes. And this is where 2 Corinthians starts. And the manuscript continues. As you can see, there are plenty of pictures in this text. So this is a collection of Papyrus 45, 46, and 47. And they come now in a printed form. Now, the other reason why I have been very enamored of St. Paul lately is because I have been writing the Acts of the Apostles. Actually, I have a couple of projects regarding St. Paul going on at the same time, and I started it a long time. But anyways, my goal is one day to write in Greek the letters of St. Paul, the ones that we call the authentic letters of St. Paul, because there are some that are according to biblical scholars, we believe are from St. Paul, and others that are attributed to St. Paul. So my hope is to fit 7 of those letters in this manuscript. So what I have here is the first letter to the Thessalonians, which is my favorite letter of St. Paul. And I also started writing the letter to the Galatians. So it should be right here. Yep. This is the end of the first letter to the Thessalonians and the beginning of the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians in Greek. So that's one of the manuscripts that I am doing. But the other one that I am doing currently is writing the Acts of the Apostles in English. And this is part of the project of a group of scribes that we have here in the Diocese of Saginaw. We are trying to write the entire Bible in English by hand and to have the experience. So each scribe is writing a different book of the Bible, and the one that was assigned to me was the Acts of the Apostles. So right now I am about to finish the Acts of the Apostles. I am going to be finishing probably within the next few days, because I am about to start or I just started chapter 28, which is the very last chapter of the Acts of the Apostles. And so that's the one that I was writing at the beginning of this video. So when the journey of St. Paul goes towards Rome, and they end up shipwrecked in Malta, and from Malta they will make their way into Rome, and that's where Paul is going to spend a couple years of his life under house arrest. And then suddenly the Acts of the Apostles ends, and now we know by tradition that St. Paul was martyred in the city of Rome there. Before I go into more details about that, a couple things that I learned in writing the Acts of the Apostles, which is a rather long book, is all the journeys that St. Paul had to make, and everything that he had to endure to preach Jesus Christ, the one that he met on the road to Damascus. For example, here I have, as part of my collection, the coins of the missionary journeys of St. Paul. This is the very first missionary journey. The first place that he visited was Antioch of Syria, where Christians were called Christians for first time with that name, Christians. And so that's when I visited Antioch of Syria. That's where I got this mosaic of St. Paul that I have right here. It's called Antakya of Syria. It is technically on the closest side to Syria from the country of Turkey. It was devastated by an earthquake most recently, a few years ago. And so that's where we were called Christians for very first time. So that's where this icon mosaic comes from. Then there is the coins from the second missionary journey of St. Paul, the longest trip of St. Paul. Then the third missionary journey of St. Paul. And then finally, the journey in captivity of St. Paul towards Rome, because St. Paul appealed to Caesar when he was arrested. He was arrested by the mob, some of the Jewish authorities that were not happy with Paul because he was a pest. And so when he was sent to Festus and Felix, and they were kind of playing ping pong with him, finally he appealed to Rome. And there was one passage that really fascinated me when I was writing chapter 26. Was very emotional when he is explaining to the king, King Agrippa, his story when he was going on the way to Damascus and Christ appeared to him. And I'm going to read it from the manuscript, actually, because it's the same. It's the New American Bible. And so this is what he says. This is what he said. On one such occasion, I was traveling to Damascus with authorization and commission of the chief priest. And at midday, along the way, O king, I saw a light from the sky, brighter than the sun, shining around me and my traveling companions. We all fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me in Hebrew, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goat. And I said, Who are you, sir? And the Lord replied, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. So you have to imagine, St. Paul is already in Caesarea Maritime. He has already appealed to Caesar. He is going to be shipped all the way through the Mediterranean to Rome, but he still takes time to tell the story when he met Jesus for first time. That's a very emotional passage. So when I was writing that passage, I was like, wow, it's like meeting your best friend for first time. But it wasn't a very romantic encounter. It was a rough encounter because Jesus challenged him to his core, right? And so the interesting detail that caught my attention, because this is the kind of things that I think of. The New Testament was written in Greek. So originally the Acts of the Apostles was written in Greek. But this is what Paul says. This is chapter 26, verse 14. We all fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me in Hebrew. Except that the text came in Greek. And so I was wondering, what did it sound like when Jesus spoke to Paul as he spoke to him in Hebrew? And that's the detail that St. Paul gives us. And so the problem is that there is no New Testament in Hebrew, right? Because the New Testament was originally written in Greek, and then all the translations that we have. Except that I remember that when I was in the Holy Land, I brought a copy with me of the Bible translated to modern Hebrew for Hebrew-speaking Catholics, which are only about 1,000 in the Holy Land, very small. And so I looked for the text of what it sounded like. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I am Jesus. And so what I did is I included the text in Hebrew also in my manuscript over here, and I put it in bold. So basically, this is what Jesus said to Saul. Shaul, Shaul, lama ata rodef oti. Why are you persecuting me, Saul, Saul? And then when he responds, I am Jesus, Ani Yeshua, in Hebrew, right? That's how the Lord spoke to him. And then you saw at the beginning of this video that I was writing the beginnings of chapter 28, and so that means that I will be concluding the book very, very soon. One last thing that I would like to share with all of you before I close this, because it's getting a little too long, is that I have here a miniature marble cover of the tomb of St. Paul, because St. Paul is buried in the church of St. Paul outside the walls in the city of Rome, and at the end of this year we're going to go on pilgrimage over there. San Paolo fuori le mura, my favorite church in Rome, by the way. And so there is the sarcophagus that contains the body of St. Paul, and it is under the main altar. And so a replica of the inscription of the sarcophagus, which is San Paulo Apostolo Martyros. It is also displayed in a museum that is right next door to the basilica. One of the things that I loved to do when I lived in the city of Rome was to go there and just take a whole day of retreat and just be there at that basilica and sit there on the floor right next to the bones of St. Paul. St. Paul in the city of Rome, and then to read the letter to the Romans, to read the entire letter to the Romans right in front of him in the city where he originally intended that letter to go to, right? So it's one of the things that I love to do when I am in the city of Rome. So anyways, there are many more things that I could say of this amazing saint of the church. Because of him, we have at least half of the New Testament. Because of him, we have these incredible evangelization efforts that he made, and he brought indeed Christianity to the ends of the earth, as the Acts of the Apostles concludes. So to finish this reflection of the Padre podcast, I would like to read just one little portion of the letter of St. Paul, the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, which is chapter 3. So I am going to open the right page just to make sure. So that would be chapter 3, verse 10. So what I am about to read would be on this page right here. This is what St. Paul says. According to the grace of God given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building upon it. But each one must be careful how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than the one that is there, namely Jesus Christ. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. St. Paul, pray for us. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.